สวัสดีค่ะท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านดิฉันขวัญดาวเขียนสมุทรตัวแทนจาก DigiTech ASEAN Thailand 2021 ออนไลน์อีเวนต์ยินดีต้อนรับทุกท่านเข้าสู่ห้องสัมมนาออนไลน์ในวันที่2ของเราค่ะวันนี้เรายังคงมีความรู้ดีๆจากผู้เชี่ยวชาญมาให้ทุกท่านอย่างต่อเนื่องเรามาเริ่มกับหัวข้อแรกกับภูมิทัศน์ Fintech ในอาเซียนและประเทศไทยโดยคุณอัศวินพละพงษ์พาณิชย์ประธานเจ้าหน้าที่บริหารและผู้ก่อตั้ง DeeMoney โดยบรรยายเป็นภาษาอังกฤษWelcome to second day of DigiTech ASEAN Thailand 2021 online event. All of our speakers have prepared excellent webinar info for you. Today, we will kickstart with Mr. Aswin Phanich, CEO and founder of DeeMoney, to speak on topic landscape of fintech in Thailand and ASEAN. The webinar will be conducted in English. Please welcome Mr. Aswin.
Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Aswin hlaphongphanich, CEO and founder of DeeMoney. And today I'd like to first thank Digitech for organizing this great event and allowing DeeMoney to participate and bring a very exciting topic to everyone who's watching today regarding the payment landscape in ASEAN, how it's emerging, how it's evolving, and what are the future trends that we all should be looking at. The main objective of this is to make sure everyone is able to look in the future and actually see the trends that are following. So I'd like to start my presentation. So we're living in a very interesting era right now where I believe a lot of us who are probably a bit older and younger can relate to this, where we started with what is called a gold standard of financial services and fiat currency, which went to no standard, and now we're in the age of digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So very clearly, we're in an environment of a complete financial revolution, which can basically trigger two emotions. One is of fear, meaning what's going to happen, where is this going, how is it going to impact our businesses, our way of sending, receiving, trading, or business itself? How is it going to change? Or the other one is opportunities. We can look at this disruption in a disruptive way or an opportunistic way. So here we'd like to talk about it and go through each step and look at more from an opportunist way, where there's a lot of opportunities coming our way, and how we're going to basically adapt and change to them. This gives us a very clear picture of one big image, which is, if you look at this map right here, it's showing all the startups and fintechs that are evolving in different regions around Asia. Two big things I want everyone to focus on this page is, one, if you notice, firstly, these are not name of banks, okay? So we have a whole new startup culture of non-banks, or in the global world, they're called fintechs, or challenger banks, or digital banks, or money transfer operators. I'm just giving various words of a new startup culture in so-called the non-bank world, where challengers are opening up as startups to basically provide payment services or financial services that traditionally were done by banks in the past. The second big point I want everyone to look at here is, very clearly in ASEAN, Singapore seems to be the, I would say, nurturing ground and startup ground for a lot of the fintechs in the region. And we can look at this and say why, but I would like everyone to understand that Singapore has basically allowed a very good regulatory framework and rules and regulations for startups to basically start. And I think the good positive effect is this is now growing, and the rest of the ASEAN countries are actually looking at this and following Singapore as a great example to say how we're going to do the same in our countries. So very much Thailand on the Bank of Thailand and the ecosystem of financial services in Thailand are actually looking at Singapore to say how we're going to adopt, adapt, and nurture the new fintechs that are going to come in Thailand. And I'm very fortunate to say that DeeMoney, where I founded with our team in Thailand, is at the forefront of cross-border business and fintech of Thailand right now, and is definitely the leader in the market today, processing very large amount of payments into Thailand and out of Thailand for cross-border payments related to personal, business, or general business payments related to foster e-commerce booms and business for SMEs. The next page over here basically highlights a very clear statement showing us the boom that is happening in funding. And if you can see clearly that the word fintech here, the first one which I want you to focus on is payments. If you see payments, you'll see that most of the funding's happening in the payment space, which I believe is an infrastructure level. So that's kind of the first infrastructure that has to be in place for the rest to kind of build up and upon. So number one region, again, not to be surprised, is Singapore. Number two is Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, and then Malaysia. So these are where most of the venture capitalists, or the large tech giants, or telecom giants, or even banks are leading in terms of putting capital towards new fintechs and startups. Obviously, I want everybody to understand that payments are the heartbeat of the industry. It is how commerce builds. It is how commerce moves. It is actually, if you have to compare it to your body, I would say SMEs are the heartbeat of the country, and payments are like your blood supply in your body. So payments is crucial to economic growth, to how the country is going to prosper, and a very important infrastructure of the country. And I think Thailand and lots of countries during COVID have directly experienced that, being able to receive money, sending money while the country is locked down, and having cashless systems to process real-time payments such as PromptPay in Thailand and various other networks in different countries in ASEAN have been crucial to the livelihood of people. So very clearly, payment is an infrastructure. It is here to stay and here to grow. And that's why all this funding is taking place to build this most important building block of financial revolution that is in place and growing. But how does this happen, right? Infrastructure can't just be built overnight. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of regulations for everything to happen. So I would say Thailand and ASEAN both are very fortunate to say that we are technologically very ahead with having 4G, 5G networks in place, excellent mobile infrastructures, 99% penetration of smartphones in our regions, allowing this technology to foster and build. So we as a country already have very strong network infrastructure, consumer behaviors that are basically used to using smartphones, Facebooks, or whether it's Line, or whether it's all the applications, M-banking. It creates the right ecosystem and setup to allow consumers to adopt mobile wallets and new technologies that are going to be built for building payments and fintechs. And of course, what we're most excited about is seeing these two social economics to basically grow and allow payments to cohesively integrate with daily lifestyles of how payments are being used, as simple as integration into chats, into e-commerce solutions, or into large ecosystems that are providing super apps. So obviously this is a multifaceted way of embedding payments into new technologies and lifestyle as we evolve into different behaviors. So this chart basically shows us moving very quickly, rapidly into growth of mobile wallets and m-banking, which are foundation layers of what's coming in the future. I want to basically bring everybody back to a fundamental point here and say, what is the dream for payments? What do we see as the ideal world where payments are in a perfect scenario? So if we were a seller or a merchant or a purchaser or a trader, importer, exporter, whatever ecosystem part we hold, what is our dream in terms for payments? So I've put on basically 6 large points here to show that financial services basically need to evolve to reach these goals where the dream of payments will actually become an ideal scenario for all of us in ASEAN or in the globe to follow. So we want a world where payments are frictionless. And the word frictionless means what? It means that it basically happens seamlessly and with the lowest fees. So if we're going to send 1,000 baht or $30 to someone, or we're going to receive that money or make a payment for that money, we basically want to pay the lowest fee. And today we can clearly say that the fees are very high still for micro payments and smaller payments. And the second basic issue we face is exchanges. So between currencies, there is originating currency and receiving currency. So there's basically friction between the two fiat currencies that cost consumers anywhere between 3 and 10% while they exchange between their send currency and their receive currency, or between the sender and the receiver of any kind. And these are basically really important big problems that we have in our current infrastructure. Second is we want it to be secure. We definitely sometimes use our ecosystems. You do use payments that are sometimes not formal, and they happen in cash or they happen between borders informally through agents. And what we can say is the security is a very, very important element that will basically change the landscape of what we're going to choose as the right payment option. So security is a very, very important part, and trust in the ecosystem that we choose to provide a payment. And most importantly now, I think during COVID, everyone has faced this, is we are in culture of instant. We want to send and receive and have the ability to basically reconcile and know the payment's been done immediately. We don't only want the money to reach immediately, we also want confirmation immediately. So there's also a tech layer here that is really important in terms of APIs, reconciliation, settlements, refunds, et cetera, that need to be done in the payment infrastructure to allow the feeling of an instant payment or a real-time payment. We also want this to be done in real-time fashion, but however, we want it in transparent fashion. So we also want to know whatever the fees are, whatever the exchange rates are, if any, in the future, maybe we want it to be frictionless where a single currency of some kind would be able to plug and play into the entire ecosystem to allow it to be frictionless as well as transparent. The last two are basically we want something that is adopted in mass. That means that it has a large network effect, and most of the ASEAN countries need to be using this new payment system, whatever it may be in the future, that is accepted in the entire region and it's seamless. So this is basically the dream of what we would consider a payment system to actually hold. And let's see how it's actually evolving. So you looked at the dream, and now we looked at the evolution of money. And this will basically show us how it started from just being barter of a medium of exchange of some kind where two people agreed on a barter of some kind and exchanged as goods and services to agree for that payment. Then we came in the evolution of gold, metal coins, fiat currency, where we are right now, and then a boom of plastic currencies, plastic cards with Visa and MasterCard, allowing mass adoption on a network layer for lots of our merchants and payment systems to basically accept digital payments using cards. Now we're at a point where we're in electronic money, where things are moving in digits, where we have mobile wallets and lots of m-banking solutions that allow money to move between an electronic payment of some kind, and it is reconciled. In Thailand, basically, we can relate to PromptPay, or in ASEAN, we can relate to multiple real-time payment infrastructures that are happening domestically. And where we're heading to is cryptocurrencies, or the world of digital assets. And when I say digital assets, I want everybody to think a bit broader. It can be centralized, it can be decentralized, it can be central bank digital currencies, or crypto tokens that are coming out in the future. So cryptocurrency in general is going to have multiple facets that are going to hold different flavors of currencies that we're used to in the past, or elements that we're used to in the past. So it's a very, very exciting time to be in, where we're seeing a complete financial revolution happening in front of us, especially from paper to plastic to electronic, fostered then with cryptocurrencies. So I want everybody to understand right now what's happening when we make a payment. So below you see a buyer and you see a seller. And we see that when a seller needs to send an invoice to a buyer, the entire ecosystem, how does that evolve? So as you can see, there are firstly many players. There is a sending correspondent bank, there is a receiving correspondent bank, there's the paying bank, there's a beneficiary bank, and then there's a clearing system which happens between central banks, evolved around this whole cycle of a payment, a single payment. And obviously, we're just sending 1,000 baht or $30 or $50. You can imagine, firstly, what's the speed that's going to happen between all of this. Second, the fees that are involved in making this happen, where every single component actually takes a small percentage or a small fee out of that payment. And thirdly, the reconciliation and economics of time. So at the moment, we're living in a point of time where we're mostly using SWIFT. So SWIFT is a network that most banks use right now, and still very prominent in the ASEAN region, between payments and between senders and receivers using SWIFT right now. If the US is closed on that particular day, your payment is not going to be received on the receiving side, due to the fact that the SWIFT network basically runs between central banks that are responsible by mostly US related banks. And thus, we're living in a country, in a space right now where we're wanting everything to happen instantly, and that can't happen using this traditional central bank and corresponding bank network system. Thus, there's obviously an evolution and revolution happening to solve this pain point. This basically shows a topology of various requirements and evolution happening in the monetary world. And where we're at right now, which is the widely accessible space, is obviously cash, bank deposits, central bank currencies that we're using, whether it's a Thai baht, Singaporean dollar, or Hong Kong dollar, or whatever currencies we're using. These are basically the widely acceptable currencies and commodities that we're basically using. The second one is where it's being built, and it's currently on a digital framework, where the evolution is taking place between what is widely accessible to the digital revolution that's happening as we speak. So this basically shows that whatever currency comes out, in the future, all of these elements and facets need to be serviced. And the currency basically that solves or provides most of the requirements will win. So which currency is it going to be, how is it going to function, we come back to our dream of payments. So back to the dream of payments, it's got to be transparent, it's got to be secure, it's got to be frictionless, and it's got to be seamless and massively adopted. So this basically tells us that whatever we're seeing as an evolution, whether it's central bank digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, or using electronic money in the form of prompt pay or a credit card or a debit card, consumers are going to choose and receivers are going to choose what is going to solve the dream of their payments to make it frictionless, the cost to be the least, and mostly massively adopted. So we're in this evolution. I can't tell you which particular currency is going to win, but all I can tell you is there are many horses going for the race and one will win. My bets are it is going to be in the digital asset world. Whether it's going to be centralized or decentralized or which currency is going to be, I think time will tell. And I think it'll be interesting that once all the ASEAN networks basically get connected together, there will be talks about perhaps in the future how there'll be an ASEAN currency of some kind to allow mass adoption between ASEAN. So I do feel that how the euro has gotten together, there is going to be some talks on an ASEAN level to adopt something that allows our economy as ASEAN to actually combine together as a strength and use networks between our current countries to actually strengthen payment system for cross-border trades between our currencies. This basically is a nice slide to show that Thailand is very, very open to digital assets. And I can say that Thailand's basically been ready for a long while, knowing that our consumers are highly ready for technological change. We have the highest users of Facebook in the world as per our country. We spend the most time online. This goes towards most of the ASEAN countries as well, with a smartphone penetration and the ability to basically accept and adopt new technologies. So we're at a point where digital assets are growing and CBDCs will come in place. And I believe that most of our consumers are actually ready to adopt it. So there's a positive mind frame that is open to change, is ready for change, and looking for change. So when that is there, it creates the right propensity to actually make this new technological movement happen and the payment infrastructure to actually go on an exponential growth phase, which I believe we're in. So we're in the era of exponential growth. We're in the era of consumer behaviors changing overnight, especially through COVID. And this is basically fostering all the mass adoption as well as the ability for adopting these new technologies to actually take place. Despite all this great action happening, we all need to come back to the drawing board and say, what is actually still the problem in ASEAN, and what's allowing it or not allowing it to grow? And I would firstly like to say regulations plays a very, very big role in payments. So payments are obviously heavily regulated. It's a licensed regulation in every single country that basically governs both the banks and non-banks or fintechs or wallets of all kinds to come together and actually work towards an ecosystem. So at this point, we have seen fragments of ecosystems grow. So it may be basically at a domestic level, which is great. So on a domestic level, I would say Thailand's basically vastly improved in terms of using the prompt pay network, allowing merchants, sellers, SMEs to use the new prompt pay network tools to become cashless, as well as reduce merchant fees in a very, very high manner, where earlier we were only subject to traditional networks of Visa, MasterCard, or other networks in place, which are obviously slower or more expensive. So I would see that what's happened domestically is now going to happen on a cross-border level, which is very exciting for a company like DeeMoney, seeing this firsthand, where we're seeing ecosystems of domestic rails basically now integrate at an international level. So movements like G2G movements between Thailand and Singapore, or Thailand and Malaysia, are also happening at a G2G level, allowing networks of real-time networks between two domestic countries to come together. So I think in the next few years, we will see ASEAN come together and allowing the domestic networks to basically be all integrated. And hopefully the expensive networks will actually start becoming less expensive, allowing customers and merchants to be able to send payments in smaller amounts. So you don't have to send, $5,000-$10,000, but if you send 10,000 baht or $50, it would still be cost effective. Second, of course, it's going to be a period of a lot of collaboration and connectivity between banks, fintechs, and open banking, what we call it, to allow networks and ecosystems to cross and correlate between each other, to allow faster payments to happen most and cost effectively. And third, settlement and reconciliation, where we see big problems of the current network. We would like instant settlements as long as instant reconciliation. So that still is a very tough problem happening today. I would say when you make a cross-border payment today, you don't know whether it's reached, not reached, or how long it's going to take to reach, whether it's been rejected, refunded, accepted. These are problems that are taking place right now. And I think in the next few years, you will see that reconciliation is going to reach an instant and real-time manner. And once the APIs and all the payment engines start talking to each other between countries, we will have the same level of transparency and settlements that we have domestically happen on an international level. Lastly, on DeeMoney, what we see as upcoming trends and in the ASEAN region, we see basically once these challenges have been overcome, whether it is with digital currencies or not, or different networks and open banking coming together, we see definitely the opportunity in smaller payments, cross-border payments happening. And with this, it's going to basically foster more growth for SMEs as well as e-commerce businesses to do cross-border trades at very, very low fees and being able to sell. So for example, a small merchant in Thailand will be able to sell goods and services to the entire ASEAN. And if it was something just worth 1,000 baht, they could still sell it, receive money for it, and it would not cost them too much and still make a profit for that. So most importantly, it's going to allow micro entrepreneurs, micro payments, and SMEs to foster and grow. So that's going to allow a country like Thailand or ASEAN to basically sell between each other and actually use the 600 over million people that belong in ASEAN to actually use trade and facilities to foster high cross-border payments. The second thing that's going to be a trend is what is called Web 3.0, and that's the use of blockchain technology as well as AI technology. So we're currently in the Web 2.0 world, moving towards the Web 3.0 world. It's an exciting period as well. Like I said, with every excitement comes fear or an opportunistic thinking. I think Web 3.0 is extremely exciting, where most of the banks, fintechs, and payments are going to adopt blockchain technologies and AI to allow the exchange of goods and services to happen via smart contracts or different new technologies such as DeFi in the financial world. So the evolution is happening, and we're going to see this take place in the next 1 to 5 years. And lots of payment companies, I would believe, are going to adopt this, which is extremely exciting. The third and most important, I would say, what we call hybrid. And we believe that all the various facets of fiat currencies as well as digital assets that are going to come require to work together. We don't think in DeeMoney that they can work in isolation. What we believe is there is an opportunity of both to come together. There's going to be an opportunity for interoperability, for settlements, and for clearing to happen between these two large ecosystems and payment networks that are growing. So in the evolution that's going to come, there is going to be a hybrid world between these two large ecosystems and payment architectures that have been built or are being built. And there's going to be an opportunity for all fintechs, such as DeeMoney or payment companies, to actually work in a hybrid mode to interoperate between this and provide settlement services, custodian services, digital asset as a service, or interoperability and settlements between them. So I think we're going to see a lot more fintechs, a lot more startups in the payment industry. Exciting period for all ASEAN region. I would say we're going to see lots more coming our way with startups to grow. So exciting period for everyone. And I hope everyone sees the light the same way I do and sees this from an exciting lens, while looking at it as disruptive as well as having a lot of opportunities. So thank you so much for attending this discussion today, and I look forward to all the question and answers ahead. Thank you.